Hey guys. We have a React suggestion. I wonder why this is a thing. Totally. Alright, this is Legendary Drops. Apparently, they got a full-blown, nihilistic soldiers now.
Ruin their games
yeah,
in
my
the
country
past,
sucks.
especially when it comes to live service games. But this
well, it's not my country. I'm Irish.
All to itself. Just
but
recently,
it sucks.
the Helldivers 2 community popped up, and they're basically calling for the end, feeling as though they've been betrayed by Arrowhead Studios. They just want to sit back and watch the world burn. And to be honest, I'm right there with them. I try to remain as partial as I can be in these kind of matters. I want to get as much perspective as I can because I want to be sound in my judgments, sound in my criticisms, and make sure they're constructive. But in the case of Helldivers 2, I'm at my wit's end. This game started off as one of the greatest releases that we've seen in recent memory. A game that took the world by storm.
I told you should have just gone to me. I charge nothing. Tell you may have less fleshy bits when I am done.
Represented what we wanted to see more of in modern games.
I'll give you a free dragon tooth if you remove it for free.
Well supported by its studio, a studio that openly.
But I think you'd have to be an actual dentist.
But in the case of Helldivers 2, they have just continued to fumble the bag. It should have been a year-long victory lap, yet here we are. So what happened this time? Can it be fixed?
Thank you for the keys tech.
I don't know. Let's find out. Regardless of what many
no,
games
Colored still banned from donating.
The crazy highs of 450k concurrent players on
They're
Steam,
not unbanned until next
players
month.
Logging in every day wasn't realistic for a relatively repetitive horde shooter like Helldivers 2. With that said, the game will be lucky to hold on to what players it has left before the end of the year. A post 2 days ago,
I'm putting up the throw. Give me a sec.
Advance, let Super Earth burn, showing an image of the automatons only a few planets away from Super Earth, which would mark the end of the game. This post is in response to the latest update, Escalation of Freedom, where they had planned to release new weapons, a new war bond, new biomes to explore, new enemies to fight, new objectives, new difficulties, and a massive enemy encampment. A well-deserved shot in the arm of much-needed content for the game, with Escalation of Freedom being the first major update since the game's release. So with all of this content being added, why are the players upset? Well, that's because this update is a balance patch and a balance changes to a bunch of different weapons across the game.
Here's the thing, I said they need to start buffing stuff. I thought they had already buffed, but apparently, like I said, they went around and... Hi, Critical! They went around and nerfed a lot of stuff afterwards. So the buff didn't really matter.
Game, which lit a fuse of growing unrest. While I'm not going to recap the balance changes themselves, the most notable changes came in damage reductions to the most used weapons by players, as well as the flamethrower support weapon, which if you played Helldivers 2 should sound familiar, as this was a major issue of contention when the game got its first balance patch and saw nerfs across all the community's favorite weapons, claiming that they were trying to rid the game of meta loadouts. The community backlash over these weapon changes wasn't received well by the developers in charge of the balancing at the time. They ended up taking to Reddit, trolling the fans of the game in the comment section, going as far as saying, I am feeding the rage a little bit for my own entertainment here, just so you know. Note that the company did apologize for the developers' comments, and the dev deleted their entire account in true Reddit fashion. Now, while that developer is no longer in charge of balancing, this balance philosophy has stayed with the game, likely spurred by player sentiment, because meta loadouts and meta gamers were scorned at the release of Helldivers 2 as players just wanted to play the game casually and wanted to use what they wanted to use. They didn't want Helldivers 2 to become some type of try-hard game like many other live service games have become. With that said, this is a horde shooter, a power fantasy mixed with...
It's, like you said, it's supposed to be a power fantasy! No, I kept playing Critical. I kept playing. Go to sleep, Declan. Also, give me $200. Because that's how late you were. But it's supposed to be a power fantasy plus. Like, the easiest way to get rid of a meta weapon is just buff other weapons. Nerfing it just makes people use to the next best weapon. That's how it works. If you buff other things, they're like, oh yeah, I can use that now.
survival horror. You are a
Critical. Here's the thing. The first nerf to the railgun needed to happen. Because it was way too strong. I'm sorry, but a simple weapon that was already in the game was trivializing the Bile Titan, which was supposed to be the strongest thing in the game at the time. It was, what was it? It was like 6-shotting it or something from far away. Like it never even got close enough to spew anything on you. Well, yes, critical. The higher difficulty. To be fair, the reason they spawned too much at the higher difficulties was people were like, so many people are doing the higher difficulties with that weapon that it was making like their like time periods that they were putting for the missions not make sense. Like you'd finish them in a day when it said 5 days. But now they've nursed everything so much that I'm surprised they even were able to complete a planet. Like, I throw 4 grenades, or I shoot 4 grenades in its mouth, and it's still like, blah, blah, kills me. I'm like, what the frick? It's just gotten terrible. The philosophy should have been buff everything up. Like, the few nerfs I agreed with were the first railgun change. I like that they buffed it back up to where it could pierce, because it was supposed to be able to pierce. But its damage needed to be lowered a bit, because it was one-shotting everything else. The only thing that ever had a chance was a Bile Titan, and that's if the Bile Titan was already upon you, and then that was your fault. It needed to be nerfed a little bit to make it where like Bile Titans could get up close to you and stuff. And where chargers weren't just like, bam, bam, dead. And then they nerfed all the newer weapons where they're not that useful. So what's good? I don't know. What's not bad? Probably the most recent weapon.
Helldiver, a dealer of death.
I'd say the armor on the mechs felt mid. The weapons damage and everything felt okay. You don't need to grab a sec if you love my emotes, thank you. But I think I think the problem was they nerfed too much. They're too nerf happy. They need to be buff happy and nerf things afterwards if they're too strong.
In a universe that deals it back just as hard. However, when you're
see,
that most of your players...
when the first nerf to the railgun happened, it was perfect because everything felt challenging. The farther you went up, it got more challenging. And like vice versa, you didn't feel like just stage 5 was very difficult.
Are using the same weapons. Maybe it's not because those weapons are overperforming. Maybe it's because everything else is underperforming. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Weapon balance.
We weren't just stuck to one. Well, don't they typically do 2? I thought they did 2. I thought there would be like a bug one as the main one, and then like a side one being the bots.
Balancing. That's the reason why players are so upset. That's the reason why they feel like Arrowhead Studio.
From what I understood, when the former CEO was going back into the dev room, he buffed up everything. What happened to that? Like, that was the reason I was about to go back into it. Because it sounded like he buffed everything back up to, like, normal standards.
Has betrayed them. Normally, you'd be right to think that. But in the case of Helldivers 2 and the kind of game that it is, it's unique. Think about it like this. Helldivers 2 is essentially the exact same game that everybody's been playing. There's some added content, mild variety for the most part. You're dropping in on the same planets, fighting...
Wait. He left? Why did he leave?
The same enemies.
Like, yeah, like if you're joking and saying, oh, he walked in, buffed everything, walked out, they nerfed everything.
I still want to do Helldivers with you after our last attempt failed due to technical difficulties while I was in Dubai. You still up for Helldivers or no?
If he doesn't die after this, maybe.
The same objectives.
Okay, I figured you were joking.
Progressively feeling worse.
It was a good joke.
The enemies have gotten stronger. Meaning, as from the player's perspective, the thing that they've enjoyed doing is becoming less fun. And
that's the thing. You're releasing harder and harder monsters and creatures, but you're not letting anything stay strong. You're nerfing it. The idea that people don't understand about meta is meta isn't really, at least for Helldivers, it wasn't even really meta. 30% of people? That's not a... Think about it. Maybe it's just that weapon's like effective in that certain situation. Like the fire shotgun being used on the bugs. No, duh! Throughout all your character propaganda and stuff, you're like, fire works on them. And use fire to kill the bugs. And literally in its description says it's effective against organics. No, duh! Of course the fire shotgun would be used a lot. You created that. You nerfing it just made an okay weapon very bad. It was okay. It was not overpowered. I used it because I liked the flashy fire. That and it said good against organic. So I was like, okay. But it doesn't matter if you have solid teamwork now, Clan. Critical. You're just so weak. That two people shooting multiple bombs on a Bio-Titan isn't working. Two people shooting its weak spots on a Crusher is taking like 5 minutes.
Problem with this game. They are not balancing the game from the perspective of the player. They're balancing it from the perspective of an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
Not the feel of the player and how these weapons feel to use, or using the common sense of, oh, I don't know, maybe the reason why players are using certain weapons more is because
thank you for the flowers, Sada.
Objectively cooler. Like,
I wish your flowers for $100 bills.
One of the coolest weapon ideas in all of video games. Everybody loves railguns.
My money problem would not.
An arc launcher, shooting lightning out of.
If I could just get past this one hurdle, then I'm.
Flamethrowers, of course.
Nah, I won't talk about
stuff like that. So maybe those weapons aren't overperforming. Maybe it's the fact that the rest of the weapons in the game are less interesting.
Yeah, like...
And I think that's...
The only reason I didn't use the Slugger, but which apparently was also getting nerfed, was it felt boring. It was a shotgun with pellets. And then... I didn't use machine guns because they felt useless. Sometimes I'd use, like, the assault rifles. Very bit, but they still felt kind of pointless. Because of so many armored things in the game, I would just use either fire, laser, or explosive. Then they made it where the crossbow didn't pierce the Crusher, and I was like, well, that was short-lived. I liked using the crossbow because, you know, crossbow, and it was helpful against Crushers because of the explosion radius. Would, like, hick them up sometimes. Doesn't do that anymore. It bounces off them, or it explodes off over their shell and it doesn't do anything. You're nerfing the good stuff, not even thinking to buff everything else in compensation. Like, if you're gonna nerf something, you need to buff everything else.
That's the case. I think that's what's going on. Well, people use sidearms and things like that in the game. For the most part, most players are just trying to use the coolest weapons because it looks the coolest in the game. It's one of the game's biggest strengths, its cinematic nature.
Like I said, fire shotgun because fire, fire, boom, boom. Explosive pistol because why not? Lasers because lasers.
and how cool it looks when you're in some of these big fights. And
Mechs, because mechs.
they need to think about that. You've lost touch with the one thing that a lot of people were looking at you and saying that this is one of the studios that we love because of this, which is the fact that you seemed like you were in connection with the players. You understood the players.
Not anymore, Sada.
As things have gone
Apparently
on,
it's
and I gotta
really
eat crow on this
useless
because I pushed
now.
back on players
It's got
for a
less
while,
ammo
saying that
now.
The first balance patch they did way
Longer
back when
reload
was
time,
just
which
a
it already
one-off
had an
thing.
abysmal
It's
reload
obvious it's not,
time.
because they just don't understand what the players want. Look at the mech. They ruined it. Thing sucks to use. I can't stand it. The rocket launchers don't work anymore because you can't aim at close range or proximity or anything like that. The rest of the weapons feel less fun to use. The game has just progressively got less fun.
Wait, they
And
nerfed
game is less-
they nerfed the mechs. The mechs were already bad. Like, they were okay. I said they were okay. Like, they needed armor buffs. The weapons were okay. They weren't crazy good. They were okay. They were good for, like, getting through some of the, like, early arachnid tunnels and stuff.
Fun. What do you have left? And with that, and with these changes, and not listening to their audience, Arrowhead Studios has also lost the one thing that they really had going for them: the trust of their players. Part of the popularity for the game was driven by how clearly and regularly Arrowhead Studios was communicating with their audience. Johan Pielstedt was on Twitter constantly responding to fans, giving feedback, giving updates, and making sure that the game was available to as many players as they could in the rough weeks that were following the game's launch. I mean, you actually had players that were completely okay with how frequently they were getting disconnected. And they forgave the fact that the game could not accommodate that many people with its growing demand. However, as time has gone
Yeah, that was
on,
the thing. I was like, I was okay with, like, not being able to get in sometimes because I was like, it's popular. They didn't think it was going to be that popular. It's understandable that the servers aren't going to handle it at first. Like, give them some time to get better servers and stuff.
To act on community feedback and how they've communicated.
I have
with
concerns
players
for when
has
the
only continued
Illuminator
to
introduced.
If they don't buff things, if they don't get back the community, they ain't gonna get to it because apparently the bots are literally right at the planet now.
It's genuinely
They're like
crazy
2
to see
spaces
how
away
things have
from
progressed.
taking
We
over
went
the
from
planet.
Celebrating a game made for everyone is a game made for no one, and talks about how not to rip off players with microtransactions, to Reddit and Discord moderators taking shots at fans that had genuine concerns for the game, developers teasing and purposefully ignoring player feedback, Sony blocking access to the game in 180 countries, and bans over using angry
This is the other thing. I think I will apply my bad review. I wasn't gonna join, but apparently Sony seemed to, they're that petty. They're like, oh, you don't want, because these places can't do it, right? Okay, well, we'll let you not have to use our proprietary bad launcher, but we're also gonna ban all 180 countries that were on it as well.
On furry art in their Discord. You had a smash hit, a cultural phenomenon that stormed the scene at the start of the year, and you're slowly but surely starting to resemble the studios that players criticize the most. I'll be honest with you, Diablo 4 and Helldivers 2 going in opposite directions was not on my 2024 bingo card.
I don't want to hear Diablo 4 because from what I understand, yeah, they added some new stuff, but it's still kind of a soulless grind.
When you've lost the ear of your player, what do you think are the optics on the recent update and
Bada.
balance changes? You nerf fire damage and other weapons in the game, yet you come out with a fire-themed battle pass. Either play...
They finally added a dragon-themed armor set. But they've nerfed the shotgun I would have used with it. I'm scared to get this battle pass because it sounds like they're just going to nerf it again.
Players are going to think, oh, I'm not going to buy that because
I
fire
would
damage
still
feels
play
less
Smite.
effective,
I'm going to try to
or
play it again.
they're going to think you purposefully nerfed the
Recently,
weapons
I
in the
tried
game
it like
so
a
that you could
few
potentially
months, not a few months ago at this point, like half a year ago, and it wasn't working.
boost sales for an upcoming war.
Not the Book Pass yet. It's Dragon adjacent. It says Draconaut, not Dragon Knight. Close.
Not to mention, along with the
Dragon
damage
adjacent.
nerf, there was a visual nerf.
Boka
The flamethrower
adjacent.
support weapon before these changes used to leave trails of fire, drip fluid on the ground, and spray realistically. Now, not only is the weapon weaker, but it looks weaker as well, with all of those effects.
What the heck is this? Why did they change the animation? The animation was amazing.
Removed, and a cheaper animation in its place. Helldivers went viral for how cinematic the fights looked in the game. It was part of its charm, and now you're removing that from the game as well? From the perspective of a player or even just a random bystander at this point, nothing about the last 3 to 4 months of Helldivers shows.
So I literally stopped playing a month before.
Shows a game that's improving. It's just a game that's progressing.
I love Smite. I'll try to download it again tomorrow. Maybe like while I'm off at my doctor's appointment. Like I'll try to get it started before I leave. But because last time it just wouldn't work. Is such a buggy mess.
Progressively getting worse, losing the interest of general audiences and that of its active player base. Shams, the new CEO of Arrowhead Studios, recently responded to player feedback after the game saw a recent crash in Steam reviews yet again, tweeting, "Getting humbled" on Reddit as usual, as players posted an image of the recent review scores and a screenshot of him on Discord saying, "So the trick for us as we try to parse feedback is that we have some folks who are very loud. While a lot of you are in the game and like it, we don't know. I've noted that people aren't fans of nerfs, duh, and performance could be better, but really, where are we at? We have a lot of folks who are very loud, while a lot of you are still playing the game and like it, question mark. Players are not complicated girlfriends that are sending you mixed signals. They're playing the game because they like it. They're loud about it because they care about it." I never thought we would.
How do devs not understand that? Or is it just this dev? Like, people can play your game and hate it at the same time. What do you think League is? Where do you think League's entire, like... Problem is, everyone is so wrapped up in copium over League that I don't think they would leave until something really bad happens. Like, we hate the paid skins that are over $50. Anything over $40, honestly. I think you could justify a 40 if you brought back legendaries. Say, we need to up the price to, like, truly pay for our, like, the workers that, like, draw and stuff that, and animate it. But this $50, $75, $500, gotcha... No. The entire reason I got really into League was, one, I could get any skin I wanted right from the get-go. I didn't have to pay tons and tons of money. I wanted a skin. Worst I had to pay was $30. For the, like, crazy, like, tons of work went into it skin. Like, it revolutionized the game somehow. And then there's this game where apparently the devs think, even though League is right there as a example, that lots of you play it, but then there's lots of people that hate it. We don't hate it. We love the game. We just want you to stop nerfing stuff so we can keep loving it. Like, listen to yourself. Think about it.
Get definitive proof of this from Arrowhead.
Here's the thing. I still really love League. I want them to, like... A thing that would change the game and probably get them a lot of goodwill is never do one of those skins again. Maybe later on release a re-edition of that skin for $20 or something with actual faker signature. And then the biggest thing, there needs to be a separate patch for esports. Because balancing it around esports has made it terrible. Because you're leaving all these other champions that are blatantly OP at lower levels. And then these other champions that are blatantly OP at higher levels. And only the ones at higher levels get slightly nerfed. Or they get gutted like Rise. You wanna know why Rise got gutted though? He was good at all levels. That's the only reason he got gutted. Because both sides were complaining. League is a good game in essence. Don't play with randoms. Because Riot, I'm sorry, but your idea of fixing the toxicity is crap. Your idea is, let's just ban everyone that says you're a poopy face. Or let's just ban someone that said something in chat. That's how bad it's gotten, by the way. You talk in chat, you're liable to get banned. Like, arguably, the last time I got banned, I didn't even say anything that bad. And they made it impossible for me to get my rank skin, because by the time I finally got my account back, there ain't no way, because the skin was given out 2 weeks ago. The season's ending in a week. You're not getting... And then, like, someone hacked my account and bought it on it. And that's why I didn't get my account until, like, a months after. So I never even got the chance to get Sejuani. Sejuani, Championship Sejuani was going to be my most favorite skin. Literally the only way they'd probably get me to promote their game. Like, before I was gonna fight Lock-On to promote it, but right now I can't. One way to instantly win me back, give me Sejuani Championship. I got to gold in that season. I deserved that skin. Not my fault I got hacked. Makes me so, like... blah. And then they added Riot Vanguard. And I don't know what to say about Riot Vanguard. Basically, I just play on PvE server now. I'm not playing PvP. I'm not giving Riot Vanguard any reason to start up on my computer. I don't like it. I know, Reddit critical. I still play it because a lot of my friends play it still. And then there's Helldivers. And all I can think is, all you had to do was get Sony to open up that game to the other people again. The fact that you sold it to them already. Yeah, the second I find out that Vanguard's used for anything, the second I get a targeted ad that only Riot would know about, or like only I would know about, guess what, Riot? I will make it my sworn duty to find out if it was you.
Studios of all places, but this is the true opinion that many of these developers run with. And that's that if you are still playing our game, well, there must not be that big of an issue.
Which is
I don't think this passed.
I accidentally clicked over.
Everyone back and they turn it into something that makes a meaningful change into the game. And that's that if you are still playing our game.
But that is an audacious statement. If you're still playing, it must not be an issue. You want to make it an issue? You don't understand. To be fair, the way players are on this game, I hope people in League get. Because if Riot gets that kind of backlash next time they try something like the faker skin, I call it the fake faker skin because it has a fake signature. Not even his signature. I think they would stop doing a lot of the crap that they do. If people actually got together and were like, freaky right?
Well, there must not be that big of an issue. You know, I just made a video called Warframe is a Wake-Up Call, and in it, I talked about how great that studio does with taking action on player feedback.
What people don't understand is, the funny thing is, a lot of the Koreans went to the gun game. I don't remember what it's called. What's it called again? Valorant? Yeah, Valorant. Y'all just actually worked. Y'all almost made a difference with that Ari skin. But so many of you just stopped after the first week that it was diabolical. You don't understand. She's a decent mid, so banning her, like, legitimately would probably change the meta. Same thing with Yasuo. The second they give us more bans, I'm gonna tell you right now, Ari and Yasuo. I'll give up my, like, legitimate bans for Ari and Yasuo, or Yone and Yasuo. That way someone has to ban Ari.
They're genuinely listening in a way that I don't think I've ever really seen very many studios ever emulate in the past. They take that feedback and they turn it into
you're fine,
something
Roy.
that makes a meaningful change into the game and makes the game more fun for the players that are playing it. And there's not a lot of studios that do that, and there's not a lot of studios that even probably think about doing it. But that is how you get a better game. And in the case of Helldivers 2, with how open communication has been between them and their fans, they haven't taken any action. And I don't know if they will. In response to further outrage from the Helldivers community, Shams took to Discord yet again to respond saying, I haven't spoken to everyone, of course, but many of us are disappointed.
The thing about Helldivers is it doesn't make sense. You're that communicative, you've got that much feedback, and you're not doing anything about it. Why not? Like, the biggest thing the fans wanted at first was bring back the 180 countries. Now it's devolved so badly into that they just want you to stop nerfing things.
On a few levels. On the one hand,
actually, at this point, I bet you have to buff things to get people back.
Maybe deservedly so, as many aren't happy with the latest balance round. I think more broadly, it has us discussing the path ahead and what we can do to avoid the situation again, i.e. internal learnings, more changes in process, etc. I think a lot of you fairly pointed out, WTF, we went through this earlier in the year, why are we here again? And I hate sounding like a broken record, but A, we have long lead times on development, i.e. what you see in the game is the result of weeks and months of development work. Some changes take time before they show. B, not a whole lot of time has passed between now and the June balance round, and most people are still on vacation. We still need to improve a lot in understanding what players want and marry that with the development process. We want every release to be a step in the right direction, constant improvement. I don't think we feel this was that, so we need to do better. But it's also clear to me that just talking isn't enough, actions matter. You and the developers are upset because there's a lot of nice things in the update that aren't getting talked about? Well,
two things on that. One, there's a lot of things in the update that aren't being talked about. It's because everyone's just kind of frustrated over the nerfs. Two, buff everything back to when it was first out. Minus the rail cannon. Rail cannon can stay with that one nerf. I don't know if you want to buff. Well, they'd probably have to slightly buff every character because people got used to how hard they were.
The players are upset because they can't.
But you still need to
nice
buff the
in
weapons
because the
to the
studio
point where
has
they were
consistently
actually
made the game less
making
fun
an
to play
effect.
and just made it an overall worse experience. Responding to players talking about how you need to avoid this in the future, this is an internal learning and there needs to be more changes in your process, are all things that Arrowhead Studios has said in the past, and here we are again. For many, including
I'm gonna tell you right now, he ain't on no difficulty 6. Those things right there don't die after like 3 or 4 hits from the Scorcher. Heck no. They take like 50.
This is nothing other than empty promises. And at this point, I'm just waiting for the obligatory apology letter that's posted on Twitter. I have been incredibly light-handed when it comes to Arrowhead Studios as I've covered this game. I viewed them as a plucky developer.
It got to the point where I was only killing about 1 per death. I used to enjoy like being able to kill like 2 or 3 of them before getting taken down.
Trying to do right by the players, making a few mistakes, but ultimately developing a really fun game and an incredibly united and positive community. With that said, I am now at the point where I don't believe that they understand or respect their audience the way that I thought they did. I viewed past actions from their developers, moderators, and community managers as just one-off occasions, but it's obvious that it's intrinsic to the studio. And I don't think that they have a firm hand on the wheel when it comes to the future of this game. With that said, this is not a channel of pure criticism. I try to remain constructive because while Arrowhead Studios has failed to act on player feedback in the past, I do know at the very least that they are listening and they do want their game to be good. Otherwise, they wouldn't update it as frequently as they do. So with that, I want to give some constructive criticism on things that I believe would improve the game for everybody. First, I'd like to talk about the updates. Initially, I loved the pace of random but frequent updates, new weapons that we could unlock, and things of that nature. Things outside of the Galactic War. However, it doesn't seem like the studio has the expertise or the organizational skills to be as ambitious as they are. Game modes that are introduced half-finished with skyboxes that are still visible. Planet hazards, when they were introduced, were completely out of control. Events that barely function, and even if they do work, they ultimately lead to crashing and disconnection issues. It's obvious that things need more time and more testing before they're introduced into the game. And likely, these things should be packaged with major updates rather than just sprinkled throughout. By testing things properly and introducing them with major updates, not only are you going to release higher quality content, but each step, each single major update will feel like a momentous occasion. While some of the things that were introduced in Escalation of Freedom were cool, it wasn't what I would have considered a major update. A couple new POIs, a new event, a higher difficulty. They're just more of the same and don't transform the experience in a meaningful enough way.
Have a good day, Critical. Have a good time at work.
Something that we can see plain as day when we look at the game's numbers on Steam. Sure, the update brought a few players back, but not nearly as many as you would expect for a major update to bring. Secondly, with how committed Arrowhead Studios is to the longevity and update cadence of Helldivers 2, I think it's high time that they put something in the way of meaningful long-term progression. I think that the best path forward for this would be something similar to Helldivers 1, where players could use samples to level and customize their weapons, giving them added damage, different ammo, or different functionality based on whatever the weapon version is. I would suggest giving longer progression paths than in Helldivers 1 so that players have a lot of room to be able to, well, have some level of player agency and customization. It's going to allow players to be able to have some level of expression within the game that's otherwise not there right now, and also give it long-term goals that aren't there as well. This will let players make guns that they want to use better, specialize in equipment, style, loadouts, and truly make the game feel like their own.
I don't think they should add that. I'm sorry, but what he doesn't understand is if they add in customization to weapons, there is no incentive for them to buff or nerf them. Well, actually, there's incentive to nerf them now. But there's no incentive at all to buff them. Because they'll have the excuse, oh, just upgrade it. Make it stronger.
The future of Helldivers 2 hinges on Arrowhead Studios' ability to reconnect with their player base and build trust. The studio must recognize that players' voices are not just noise, and they're a call to action that reflects genuine concerns and expectations for the game. Listening to and acting on player feedback isn't just about appeasing the masses, it's about valuing their investment in the game, their investment in you. Helldivers 2 was a beacon of light in a relatively bleak world of live service games. It's a game that, at its start, was doing it right, however, the follow-through just hasn't been there, but that doesn't mean things can't change. My message to Arrowhead Studios, or really any video game developer, is be happy when you have an audience of loud players, because the louder they are and the more of them there are, is the more people that actually care about your game and the future of your game. while they're not going to voice their opinions the right way, that's just not what gamers typically do. We tend to meme and just say mean stuff more than anything else. They're still letting you know that there's something wrong with the game that you need to fix. And it's up to you to be able to parse that out and figure it out. It's not the player's responsibility to give you actionable feedback. Sure, there's going to be some of them that are out there that are well-voiced and understand where they're coming from. But for the most part, you're not going to get that. So it's up to you to be able to figure that out. You really got to take your foot off the gas when it comes to these balance changes. I don't know if it's developers that they have that are just not happy with the game's community and lash out and like to see them writhe in the fact that the weapons feel like shit and the game just objectively feels worse to play and the enemies are that much more difficult to fight. Or what? I don't really get it. They're balancing it like it's a damn competitive shooter, and that's just not the kind of game that it is. And you combine that with the fact that there just really hasn't been any meaningful content that's been added to the game, and yeah, of course you're going to get situations like this. Of course players are going to get upset. Why wouldn't they get upset? They're bored, and you're making the game worse. Like, you have people that are playing your game right now that are logging in every single day just because they want to see what happens with the Galactic War. People that have maxed out their accounts and have literally nothing else to do in the game other than just play it to play it. And that's about it. So from their perspective, as people that have already done everything in the game, when you go in and you rebalance weapons and you make the weapons that they were using worse, well, the game just got worse. So you got to do something about that. I definitely do think that long-term progression is a key to being able to bring a lot of people back into the game and make a lot of the people that are already in the game enjoy it more, because it gives a lot of room for distraction. It allows them to be able to chase something else and not be so committed to every single thing that changes with the game because there's nothing else that's going on in it.
It's okay, right?
So yeah. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video.
That
Sad to see
was
the game take a
Legendary
turn
Drop.
like this. Hopefully they
For the most part, I agree. Only thing I disagreed with was adding like customizations. Like, you think it sounds good, but no. Too much comes with that you won't like.